تکمیل ندارد بشکاف دلم دست کم از نیل ندارد 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 از دست خود انجیل ندارد 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 ندارد.
Thank you, Laurie. That's fine. Well, welcome everyone to the British Museum, and many of you will know that this is one of a series of wonderful collaborations that the museum has been doing with Magic of Persia over these past years on Iranian artists and focusing on artists whose work is represented in the collection of the British Museum. So I want, first of all, to say a huge thank you to Shirley Ilghanian for initiating this series and for all that she has done over the years to support artists. And she's been doing this assiduously for many, many years. And many of you, I'm sure, have attended these absolutely fantastic Magic of Persia events. I think it's also fitting to mention here her part and that of Mariam Eisler in the campaign Women, Life, Freedom at the time when the world has heard the news of the awarding of the Nobel Peace Prize to Narges Mohammadi. But before I begin, I should say, some of you might have seen these kind of amazing posters on buses and so on, and all the T-shirts and so on. But before I begin my part in this, I also want to thank all of those who've been involved on the Magic of Persia side, particularly Ferishte Musavi and Natalie and Laura at Magic of Persia Foundation, and also Vali Mahlouji. On the British Museum side, this would absolutely not have happened without the support of Sian Hoggett, who some of you will have met outside, who is the head of the British Museum Friends, and her colleague Ellie Worsfield. And here I'd also really like to thank the AV team with Nori Hung, who's up there, who's just going to make all this perfect. The music that you heard as we were gathering today has been put together for us by Shahrazad Afrashte, Khosrow's partner, and we'll be hearing from her at the end. This music, I think, encapsulates Khosrow, and really exceptional artist and an extraordinary human being who many of us in this room had the privilege of knowing personally, and whose energy and passion and love for life made it a complete joy being around him. This is what we have come to remember today, through films, through talks by speakers who are with us, Rose Issa, Maziar Bahari, Shahrazad, and the voices of friends in Tehran. My connection with Khosrow came through acquisitions, and there are 4 works by Khosrow in the collection of the British Museum. This was initiated by Rose, of course, who you'll be hearing from shortly. When she showed Khosrow's works to me, I was intrigued by not only the quality of the work, but who he was and his story. And we'll be hearing a lot about that during the course of this afternoon. But this painting, I'm in Love, went into the exhibition Word into Art in 2006 here at the British Museum, an exhibition organised with the help of Saib Agner. And Saib, it's a pleasure to have you here today. Not only was this a work that looked initially like a Persian miniature, but on a vast scale. It was actually a portrait of him, as I discovered, and covered with text. And you can see extracts of the words that are written across the pastel on the right here. And it's poetry and musings, and inspired by the poetry of Hafez. We'll be hearing about how he started out painting on paper bags. And here is a beautiful portrait of his mother, whom he describes as an incredibly determined and positive woman, widowed when Khosrow was 6 years old, and she frequently sat for him. This is another work, a very stark work that was acquired by the British Museum, one of the war series, an extraordinarily powerful group of works commemorating the dead of the Iran-Iraq War. But it has to be Tahti that has the most resonance for me. This was, there you see it on the left there. This was one of Khosrow's ready-to-order series, which he began in 2006, in which he placed musicians and heroes inside a box. And here the focus is on this amazing wrestler called Tahti. And Tahti was a Pahlavan and considered the greatest contemporary Pahlavan of the modern era. He was not only a wrestler of enormous physical prowess, but also embodied the chivalrous spirit known as Javan Mardi. And I always thought that actually Khosrow embodied that spirit as well. The box can be likened to a hedgeley, the small personal shrines placed at the roadside that commemorates a loved one, often someone who has died in the service of their country and is considered a martyr. Tahti died at the age of 37 in questionable circumstances. And in the box, Khosrow links Tahti to the historic group of Jahan Pahlavan, these world heroes, that goes back in time to the epic hero Rustam and sort of takes in Imam Ali along the way. Now, we put Tahti on display in the British Museum, in that little room, which when you come into the British Museum, it's on the right, it's called Room 3. And this was at the same time as Sheila Kambi's exhibition, Shah Abbas, the remaking of Iran. And the experience for me was absolutely profound. And I have to say, one of the most important experiences for me here at the British Museum. What I didn't know was how resonant the person of Tahti was. There were stories about him, really abounded, concerning his generosity, his kindness, his help to people following the earthquake in Bam. Khosrow turned the exhibition space into his office, and he was meeting people there all the time. And whenever I gave a talk, there was always somebody in the group who had a story to tell about Tahti. And Tahti loved Pahlavan. And for him, he told me, it was that these were men who belonged to an age of generosity and civility who taught us the lessons of humility. We made a little film about this exhibition, which you can see through this link. And of course, what this was about was the world of the Zorkhane. And this is where wrestling takes place, as you all know. And one of my enduring memories was the Zorkhane that I organized with my friend and colleague Vesta Curtis, where we brought the Zorkhane, would you believe, of Maida Vale, to the British Museum. An absolutely amazing experience with an absolutely traditional Zorkhane, with all of the rituals being enacted there. And all of those wrestlers, you can't see them in this picture, but they were all wearing T-shirts with photographs they'd especially have printed off Tahti on it. And if you go to the Persian restaurant on the Harrow Road, the Behesht restaurant, you will see pictures of Tahti, absolutely. Everywhere. And this exhibition, in fact, toured both to Manchester and to Newcastle, museums there. And what was amazing was that every time I went there for the opening, there were Iranians there all the time. Who knew there were so many Iranians in the UK, and so many of them interested in wrestling? So it was really quite a remarkable experience for me, that entire thing. Very, very proud of this acquisition for the British Museum. Now, before I hand over to Rose, we've managed to get some copies of this wonderful book. Some of you may have seen it outside, put together by Miriam Shatanawi, and it was made on the occasion of a retrospective at the Tropen Museum in Amsterdam in 2007. And it's a really lovely book, very hard to find, actually, and with some excellent text, not only by Khosrow himself, but writers such as Hamid Dabashi, Aydin Aghdashloo, and many others. Just to say that I'm afraid we only take cash, and if you can find me and one of my colleagues. And this was published by Saki Books, and you'll also see outside a little leaflet about Malu Halassa's book, which has just come out, which is Women, Life, Freedom. So without more ado, I'd like to hand you over now to start our afternoon, and starting with Rose Issa, who many of you know, of course. It's really, I have to say, I should have told you what to do in case there's a fire or one of those things. Sorry, I forgot. So I'm going to tell you now. If this continues, then you just need to leave and go out of the back. And I think that's the only instruction I need to give you, actually. But Rose, of course, you all know Rose. She's a curator, writer. She's championed the visual art and films from the Middle East and North Africa in the UK for really such a very long time, over 30 years. Hugely influential. Without her, many of these artists, I think I would say, including Khosrow probably, would not have seen such exposure. And she and Khosrow collaborated for a very long time. And I'm just going to hand you over to her now. Thank you, Rose, very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So many of Khosrow's friends are here, and they know a lot about him. However, I gathered a few images for those who maybe missed a few of his exhibitions or so on. That was a very good article, by the way, for Canvas magazine did on Khosrow, but several other people did. In 1998, I was in Tehran looking for films for National Film Theatre about a big festival we did in 99 about the Iranian cinema. It was called Art and Life, the new Iranian cinema. The book later on was translated into Farsi. And it was during that time in Tehran at the Bukhara Art Gallery, which was directed by Mandana Olia Shirazi and Nader Zulfaghari, who for me has the best eye in the art world in Iran, who introduced me he said, you should meet this guy, Khosrow, and actually he introduced me also to Fahad Bushiri. And I said, yeah, sure, call him. He came with a motorcycle and lots of huge tubes of work. And I saw the work and I liked it right away. And I said, you know, we can do it in conjunction with the film festival. We can do an exhibition for you. And it was at Diorama Arts. A friend of mine who's here somewhere, Graham Day, a British artist who had his studio there, managed to secure the venue for us. And so I had a venue, I had the artworks, and Khosrow came for the first time to London. That was the first time he was going out of Tehran. I can't tell you how surprised he was the first time he could see hair or miniskirts, or it was summer also, so everybody was half naked in the parks of London. And it was really, he fell in love with London. This is how he always carried these tubes, large tubes of works with him at Diorama Arts. And we exhibited this series of work that Venetia mentioned. And it was, in fact, Delfina Studio at that time, we started with really almost no budget. So Delfina Studio very kindly, generously offered for him to stay for 3 weeks there. And then the British Museum and the World Bank both acquired several work of his. So that could pay for his trip to here and his per diem and his pocket money so that he can live as long as he wanted here before going to Tehran. And it was a really very enjoyable time. This is one of the very few works that he did on canvas that is in the collection of British Museum. His wife, Ashraf and Yashar, his son. Beautiful painting, and Venetia did well to show you the details of it. It's all made on the packages of fruit sellers, because during the daytime he was a fruit seller, and at night he painted all the time. And the documentary of Mazyar Bahari later will show you how his life, paint no matter what, will show when he was a fruit seller. So it's not very easy to restore these things, but they are stunningly beautiful. Another work of his. Then After all this exhibition, also, what I forgot to say, during the first 99, he saw also lots of Iranian films. I go back one. He saw lots of Iranian films for the first time, because in Iran they didn't show films before the revolution. So London was an occasion for him to see the films that I selected, some over 50 films at that time, before the revolution and after. And he was very keen on seeing all the films that was before the revolution. It covers from silent era to 1999. So it was wonderful for him, and he wanted to come back to London. So the other excuse was during the Iranian Contemporary Art Exhibition at the Barbican in 2001, where we showed his war series, a whole series that he did on his friends and comrades who died during the 8 years of Iran-Iraq war. On the corner, not well seen, is Aydin Aghdashlu's work there. I put his teacher next to him. Aydin came, but Khosrow at that time, for some reason, the Museum of Contemporary Art didn't give him the ticket, gave it to somebody else, I don't know why. Anyhow, so these are the series still in London, war series. I think at some stage I will give them to the Imperial War Museum. So the buzz was in the air suddenly because of Khatami and the ministry making things much easier to get the works out. In France, in Spain, everybody was asking me who are the photographers, who are the painters, and so on and so forth. This is Abbas Attar. For those of you who know, he is one of the founders of Magnum, one of the beautiful, most important photographers really in Paris, and who is Iranian, who did the whole series of Khosrow in his studio here with his wife and his daughter Nadia. Then Shirana Shahbazi, another friend of his, who went to Tehran and also took photos of him and his family, Yashar and Nadia with him. This is a photograph that Shirana Shahbazi took of, I don't know okay, yeah. Shirana took from the series the Goftar-e-Nik, which is one of the 3 words in Zoroastrian, Goftar-e-Nik, Afkar-e-Nik, Kardar-e-Nik. Anyhow, this was shown at the Photographers Gallery then in Covent Garden, for those of you who have seen it. But many years later, she asked a painter, poster painter, billboard painter, Sirus Shaghaghi, who painted her, and then that was exhibited at the Barbican with all her floral and other portraits of artists at the Barbican. And in fact, she had 3 exhibition solo shows at the Curve Gallery in Barbican later on. By 2002, sorry, I'm not reading my notes, so I'm sure I missed a few things, but by 2002, he always told me, well, I want to go to Beirut. So I found a gallery in Beirut, Janine Rebei's gallery, directed by Nadim Bagdash, who said, I love his work, let him come. At that time, there was no visa problem and still there is no visa problem between Iran and Beirut. So he came, and he loved it, and he showed a lot of his works there. He did actually 3 solo shows in Beirut every 2 years. This is with Nadim Bagdash, the owner of the gallery. They did the whole series of the Chador and Ashura series, which are sort of like monotype, because each of them, they look the same as if it's a print, but in fact they are quite different, because each of them he adds something, an element, a new element to it. And then in 2002, the same year that he exhibited in Beirut, there was this serial killer in Mashhad who had killed 16 prostitutes. He was only 39 or something like that, but you will see it in the film of Mazyar Bahari, who was here, an old friend of Khosrow also here, so he wanted to give homage to these women, really, who are really doing the job they did because they were in financial need. And so he made them sometime bigger than nature, huge portrait of them that I exhibited later on in 2003 at the House of World Culture. These are, you can see the size. This is Khosrow, who is already 2 meters tall, you know. He looks tiny next to these portraiture that he gave, monotypes that he did of those prostitutes. And as in fact, you see here, that was the exhibition in Berlin at the House of World Culture. It was one of the biggest events, in fact, on Iran. It had not only a huge exhibition with a big room as big as this on Siyah Harmajani and so on, but also a program of literature, theater, music, and films. And Khosrow's work, of course, was there, and on the small little screen there is Mazier's film that we had shown there, and along came the spider. So it was really, the news was fresh and far better than the feature film that came here, because it was very, very moving to see the conviction of a man who thinks that he is doing a good job, and was very, very surprised that he was condemned to that. Anyhow, these are when Khosrow was hanging part of the show. His space was much bigger, with Mehra Muhajir, a wonderful photographer also, who helped us, who was in that show and who helped us. This was the 12, I had 12 then, by then, pictures of it, and that was the ground of the House of World Culture. The golden installation you see is by Farhad Mushiri. At the end, there were photographs of Kiarostami, etc. I mean, so many good artists were in that exhibition. This was a general photo with, you can recognize Shirana Shahbazi, you recognize Shadi Qadirian. Behind Shadi with the hat is Abbas Attar, who very generously also lent us many works for the exhibition, and Peyman and Mehra Muhajir, of course. And by 2007, Venetia already mentioned the big retrospective at Tropen Museum happened with Mirjam Shatanawi, who curated the show. I was supremely happy for him, because they also acquired some of his works for their collection. I had worked before on several occasions with Tropen Museum in '95 and before, and we managed to collaborate with the calligraphical show, with the Chant-Avedician exhibition. And Khosrow liked a lot Chant-Avedician. They said, you know, we have joint things we can do. And he did a huge series on the Pahlavan. They had a lot of it. And also of the news series that he was working on the terrorists, because there was such an anti-Muslim, anti-Iranian mood in the West that he said, you know, I am a terrorist, my mother is a terrorist, my sister is a terrorist, and then wrote really their life, how they lived, you know, and how can this life be considered the life of a terrorist? This is in the Tropen Museum. That's his sister, Rehane. That was a part of that exhibition, I mean, series, also traveled later on to Venice Biennale. It was an exhibition that was curated by Jemima Montague, who was with the Turquoise Mountain. For those of you who know, she worked in Afghanistan on several projects, and she also exhibited this series that was called Ya Ali Madad, that he did of the Pahlavans with different eras, combined different colors, very colorful, beautiful works that he had. It was called East-West Diwan. It had a tiny catalog, but I don't know if you can ever find that catalog. Probably went out of print. And finally, I think the whole culture of Khosrow and his whole attraction came really to make his big signature with those boxes that were called the Ready-to-Order series, where he put lots of elements of things that he collected, textile objects, metalwork, prints, anything that he liked, even frames and lights and so on, make it very beautifully kitsch. And he did this work on Tahti that really British Museum acquired, and that was wonderful, wonderful exhibition. Actually, we see on the interviews, Aydin Aghdashli, we said that is the best exhibition Khosrow ever had. Wonderful work. I hope one more day you can bring it out and we can show it. But he did with other artists like Gugush, the singer. He was paying homage to the singers in Iran and all these boxes. And he did, of course, a portrait of himself. But you can see all the glamour and glitter that he puts around differently for each personage. And then for some, there is a gap in my presentation, which is between 2010 and 2015, where Khosrow was in London, but we saw not that much of each other. And he was exhibiting with quite a few different commercial galleries like Opera and so on, but also in Dubai. But unfortunately, I couldn't find the images of his shows in Dubai because on 2 occasions our computers were stolen in the gallery in High Street, Kent. So some of the images had disappeared. I couldn't find them. But I didn't see him that often between 2010 and 2015. But then we get in touch again in 2016 in Tehran, when he was doing this series of pop singers, Iranian singers, Arab singers, and Andy Warhol, and he was very depressed at that time. He was going through a very difficult personal crisis, and so he did yet he was very passionate. You know, suddenly he showed me an amount of work that rarely you see in an artist studio that was based on Andy Warhol. And the whole series was called Andy Saved My Life, that he later exhibited at the Iran Shah Gallery in Tehran. It was a wonderful series, really. This was supposed to be mine, but I think it was sold somewhere. It disappeared. It's a beautiful, really, the whole series. It was 20 of them that he did, magic series. But it did save his life because he was working so hard that all the pains he was feeling had disappeared. And the conclusion of that series was again in a box with the neons and everything. It was really quite stunning with Marilyn Monroe or banana. So all the elements of Warhol in the box. This is in his studio in Tehran. That's a photograph that his daughter, Nadia, took of him in his studio. He was really recovering, was a very happy man. You can see even the cockroaches of Bita Fayazi, a very close friend of ours and wonderful artist in here. Actually, those cockroaches, for those of you who went to the Barbican exhibition, I had thousands of them coming out from the heating system to the floor. And that was the most popular artwork, I think, for the kids who came from schools. So Khosrow always had works by his friends in his studio. And the last inspiration that I saw in his studio really were on Reza Motori. For those of you who had been in Iran before the revolution, there were those very, very popular films. Shirley actually was very tempted to do a program with it. Maybe we should still do it. And which was a Masoud Kimiavi's film. It was done in 1970 with this wonderful actor, Behruz Vusughi. And he did a whole trilogy. The first one was Qaisar, the Caesar, and then Reza Motori. This is the actor here on his motorcycle, because Khosrow, you only know him on his motorcycle, wonderful motorcycle. And so it was a series that Masoud Kimiavi did, a trilogy, which was about a hero and how, a working class hero, of course, and how it's about working class hero. It's about rebelliousness, it's about self-destruction, and so on. And these stories of Behruz Vusughi and Masoud Kimiavi, who was the husband, by the way, of Gugush at some stage, attracted very much Khosrow. Then he moved little by little to these works that he wanted to do tiles. And with Arab singers here, you can see Asmahan, Sabah, Kalsoum. So all these singers who were in the book of Chant, Fayrouz and so on. Chant did census of them in Egypt. And he loved Chant's work. And he did the whole panels in ceramics with the Arab singers, but before that, it was also, as you could see before, the collection of Iranian singers and dancers. This is in the collection of Mrs. Mahdavi. I think I saw a picture of Mrs. Mahdavi with this collection, but I don't know why it disappeared from here. I had to reduce it to fit in the 20 minutes, I think. No? Yes. That's the last one, actually. And this was his last exhibition in London, in Epic Iran, that Ina Sarikhani curated. And he was here, and the Sarikhani collection has collected this self-portrait of Khosrow in the ready to to order, and it was in that last exhibition he had here in London. A party that Ina gave later on with several of the artists that you recognize here, Babak Kazemi, Shahzad, Khosrow, Ina, and Abdullah Nafisi. And last is the picture of Khosrow. I didn't mention somebody I was hoping would talk about him as an actor. Maybe Mazyar can talk about that. This is a picture by Shahzad of Reshte, who took it of him. And I thought, because he always was so real, but at the same time he was acting. And I always saw a similarity between him and Vincent Cassel, the French actor, who I totally by chance recently saw him advertising Prada before he was advertising Yves Saint Laurent. And I thought it was so much like him, really. They looked so much, and they had the same sort of ups and downs, same generation and everything. So I thought I will finish on a note of him as an actor and a wonderful person. And I was delighted to have this short walk with him. And I thank him for that. Thank you.